Welcome
Hey, B.
to the Mixer. Says, hey, CW, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good. Bringing in the holiday cheer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hope you guys are all doing great out there. Hope you had a good year. We haven't been around much this fall, but we're happy to be here now. We thought we'd round out the year. Eric, tell them what we were thinking of doing.
Well, as you know, the podcast features both plugins and horror movies. And this time we thought we wanted to do a recap of the year. And then we thought, why don't we split it into two? We're going to do one episode for the plugins, all the best audio software of 2022, according to the Mixersist. And then we're going to do another episode of the top horror movies and top horror TV shows of the year. So let's start with the plugins. And also what I'll do at this point, I'll make later, you know how you can do that YouTube square thing? I'll put one there so you can, if you came to look for the other thing, you can find it there. So what do you think about that, Chris?
Yeah, keep your shit separate, man. You can't have plugins and horror movies in the same room.
You want to see what we got here?
I do.
Here we go. Here's the panel of death, as we like to call it.
Well, that's pretty nice.
There's a lot to talk about. You know, a lot happened over the year, I should say, right? So, let's see. What shall we do here? I wonder if I try this trick here, if we can bring ourselves into the picture. Oh, not bad. Not bad. You see yourself there?
Yeah, dude, that's pretty sweet. Nice trick.
Cool.
So it was, you know what I found? This year wasn't as astonishing in terms of new releases. Like a lot of the ones that I used this year are actually ones that I bought last year. There were a lot of good releases last year and the year before. This year was a little more esoteric. So it was a little harder to find ones that were not only were they great, but I use them all the time. I've noticed that. However, I have cut back a little bit on music mixing, and I've been working more on songwriting and podcast production for a new fiction podcast that I'm working on. So maybe it's the use cases. I'm not using, the reverbs, for example. I'm not using them as much as I normally would. What about you? What'd you find?
I found that there were a few particularly good breakthroughs this year. I guess we could start with the waves, with the clarity. I think that was probably something of note. That utilizes machine learning / AI, which I think is probably, this is not, I wouldn't call this the year of audio AI, but I think that we could be seeing that next year. But should we talk about Chat GPT in the yes,
plugin episode or in the horror movie episode? Where do you want to talk about Chat GPT?
Where does that belong? Both, actually, right? Chat GPT. Chris, why don't you explain what Chat GPT is for those that want to know?
So basically, it's an AI system where, most AI systems scour like a body of knowledge or a body of data and use it to try to simulate real human interactions. In this case, it is if you type a question in, or if you, you can ask it a human language question like, hey, summarize this essay for me, and you feed it an essay or you feed it a book excerpt and it'll summarize it for you. Or you can actually plug in code. Let's say you're a programmer, you can plug in code and say, why isn't my code working? And it'll find the error for you and it will recode it. It will actually tell you what the right code is to pump in. So it's obviously based on massive volumes of data, publicly available data. And it's also it's running on this massive server farm. Remember back in the days, what was the streaming thing after Napster, but before Napster really went down, they started having these, Eric, come up with a name for me. LimeWire, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, so these giant server farms, right? And they had all these nodes that would share and slice up processing. So it works the same way. So it can thunk really big volumes of data to try to come up with these answers. And it's actually not bad. I use something called Jarvis.ai, which is similar. It's not that great though. It's all about what you put into it. If you give it good inputs, it'll create great outputs. Like if you're really specific, I'm looking for some ad copy for a new electric toothbrush that I'm marketing, and it has the following features and it serves the following people, it'll probably come out with a really great ad copy for you. But I was thinking about this today. One thing it'll never be able to do is come out with a new style. Remember when Pulp Fiction came out and that was like a new style of movie, and then everyone started to try to make movies that were like Pulp Fiction, like the ending is at the beginning and you're jumping around the timeline and trying to make sense of it. That was kind of a new feel, a new vibe in film. It'll never be able to do that. It will never replace that aspect of human creativity, except to try to randomize things or arbitrarily adjust variables, which I don't think is the same thing. I think the feel isn't there. Right. If you want to have fun, go to either canva.com or you could try something like jarvis.ai, and they both have one of those new AI image generators. Have you seen that?
Yeah, I have. I used not those ones, but there was one precursor to that earlier on in the year called Dolly or something like that. Now, all of this stuff is free to use, by the way. We should mention that at this point, that you do have to register for ChatGPT.
And it probably won't be free forever.
Right.
It's free for now is what they're saying. But if you want to have some fun, go to one of those artificial image generators. And I typed in something the other day. I said, because I was doing a survey for this course that I'm building for some beta testers, and said, make me an image, a photograph of a woman leaning over her computer answering a survey. And it did, like it had this picture of a computer and a woman sitting behind it and her hands are on the keyboard. But if you zoom in on the screen of the computer she's looking at, there's a person, and that person looks like Satan, except she's female and Greek. Like that's, and it's disturbing. And then when you look at the keys on her computer, they're all Salvador Dali-esque, and then her fingers, like a bunch of her fingers are fused together. It's a nightmare. So check it out. You're going to love it. Anyway. That's my rant on ChatGPT. What do you think?
I think so. I think, it started out as the, AI as far as audio and stuff. But yeah, AI has gone, I'd say, farther. It's having more of a year this year in other areas, like with the writing, like with the AI generated art. There is another program that I forgot what it's called, but you give them $8 and you upload a whole bunch of pictures, and it gives you in return, it processes all the pictures. It makes you look like a superhero. It fixes your face.
Oh yeah, because it's a super great idea to send your face print up to some unknown company in the internet.
Yeah.
Nice job. That way, if you ever land at an airport in China, they just immediately pull you over and say, come with us, please, sir.
Yeah. Speaking of AI, you got the tracking cam on, I see. It just, you just must have put your hand up and you told it to track. We've got these new cameras. We got they're called Insta360s. They're way cool. I'm not going to show you because I'm running the green screen now, but they will follow you around a room. You put your hand up, which I'm not going to do for very long because I don't want to tell it to start zooming in and out, but you put your hand up and it'll start following you around. You can give it knows, and it levels itself out automatically, and it does the color balance. It does everything automatically.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet.
I put it on a mic stand. It's tiny, right? And I put it on a mic stand and good to go pretty much, right? I pulled up a key and wow. There you go. See, you're just centered now.
I'm swinging a little too far the other way, but anyway, okay. So the one AI plugin that I really like was Neoverb, even though it's not this year's plugin, because Neoverb will let you, it'll let you put in an input signal and it'll say, okay, I can reverberate this for you using this algorithm, but you've got like a whole bunch of frequency concentration around 200 hertz. And if we reverb that, it's really going to muddy up the mix. So I'm going to duck that out for you. So it'll actually create an EQ curve, pre-EQ and pre-reverb and post-reverb. It'll create a nice little curve for you to help juice up the reverb so it sits nicely in the mix. I thought that was a cool little advance, and it doesn't feel like it's taking the creativity away from me. It's just really trying to help and save me a little time. So I actually dug that.
Yeah. That's something I hope that we see more of. I mean, the AI has gone into mastering, and it says, it'll make your track like just to the dynamics that you want. It's hit and miss results, but it keeps getting better. And I think eventually, maybe not even next year, but we're going to see, you type in the computer, here's my tracks. They're all labeled. Oh, sorry. Here's my tracks. They're all labeled. Mix this in the style of Bob Clearmountain. There you go, right? And then
or a satanic looking lady from Greece, like this Macedonian nun with her fingers all fused together. I gotta send you the picture because it's really upsetting.
Oh yeah, please do. If you send it to me now, we may be able to get it to the list viewers.
Sure, I'll throw you a couple that were really disturbing.
Yeah, just link them in my in the signal there.
I also typed in. But, she made me a picture of my friend Kevin throwing up between two buildings, and it did it. It was incredible.
And you sent it to him, of course.
Yeah, of course. Anyway, so let's talk plugins. I'll get these sent over to you.
Yeah, cool.
And
while we're doing that,
let's talk plugins.
Let's go with start off with Clarity VX, which is I don't know if it's I guess it is AI or it's a neural network of some description. It studies it knows what the noise is versus what your voice is. When this came out, it was $29.99. I think you can probably still get it on sale for that occasionally, probably definitely during the holidays. There's a more advanced version, which would be the Clarity VX Pro. That's when you're getting into a couple $100, but a lot more parameters to tweak. Either one. I don't have the Pro, actually. I've got this VX, and this is my favorite noise reducer plugin, I think, out of all of them. Yeah,
I used to use NS1, still do. And it's quite good, but if you own AirPod Pros, the new generation, noise reduction has gone in leaps and bounds. Like, it's extremely intelligent and very effective. And so my only beef with Clarity VX Pro is that it's not yet available for M1 native. So you're going to have to run it in Rosetta mode. Yep.
And it's kind of slow on that now? Is this a Waves problem in general? Because I know there's a couple companies that just their product line was so huge, and they're just like, we can't do it. We can't do it right now.
This one, I suspect because of the computations that this is probably unique and it would require kind of a redo. Yeah. In order to port it, and it's still after 6 or 7 months, it's not available. So that's the only downside.
Yep. Other than that, though, spectacular plugin, really good results, really smart. There are videos that you get from when this came out that totally removes like traffic noises and horns and stuff, and you're not going in and like manually having to do it like you would in RX or something like that. It just knows. And it takes it out. And if you crank it up, you will suffer a bit of a loss of tone, but I'd submit that loss is less than any other noise reduction,
agreed,
type plugin that I've tried. So why don't we just move on? Let's just cycle through a bunch here, see what comes up.
Yeah.
Here we go. Big Sky Reaver from Strymon. I put this on the list just because that guitar pedal is so famous, and they took all the algorithms and they put them in plugin format. I think they charge something like $249 or $299 for the thing. Really expensive. There's a couple plugins in our list that are that way, but hey, it does all the algorithms, and these are all tricks, different kinds of routings, tape, delay, chorus, bloom, granular effects, some stuff that would take a long time to set up manually. If you were doing it in the DAW, you'd have all these tracks with plugins on it and feedback loops, and it's all just right here. Sounds fantastic. So that was one of them. API Console from Sonimus. It's the Sonimus A-Console. I love this thing. I got to drive it a few times. Different options. You can change between different drives. There's a fat mode. I don't know if you know there are other plugins like Satson, Britson, those ones.
Yep, I do.
Same idea. You could put it on every track and you specify whether it's a track plugin or a bus plugin. And when you've got the bus plugin on, you can affect like all the tracks at once. It's really cool stuff. This one may sound the best out of all of them so far. Tan 2. I put this on here because this was the first Acustica product that had the new compressors with the what do you call it? The hyper technology. And it's free, right? And it's free. By the way, they just released another free one. If I can go back, I don't know if I loaded it up yet. It's called Arctic. Did I put it on here? Yes, I did. So let's go to that. Arctic is also free right now, Christmas break. This thing's even better. This one is also using the hyper technology. It's got oversampling up to a ridiculous amount. You can slide in between compression, limiting, and saturation, just like another company, Eventide. They just released that newfangled Invigorate. Same idea, different sound. It doesn't sound the same as that one, but it's the same kind of idea, very intuitive. I was getting really good sounds with this really quickly. Here you go. What do you think about this one?
Which one? I'm trying to get that graphic over to you. Don't worry, keep
okay.
rolling.
The Apogee soft limit.
Oh, I haven't tried
Also
it.
another free plugin that came out earlier in the year. They pumped it up for a while. Like you had a list where you had to go sign up to see if you wanted to get the plugin for free for a while. And it's like, I don't know how long they're going to last. But it does remind me of the old samplers, like the Mini-Me and the old converters. And sort of replicates the effect of clipping converters and that sort of thing. That those converters had the built-in, Apogee converters had a built-in soft limit, which would help you get more level before you went over over zero there. So that's basically what they've tried to put into plugin form. Really like it. I've used it a few times. I probably should be using it more because my initial impressions, and every time I have pulled it out, I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. That sounds good. So Sound Particles Air. Now this is a distance simulator plugin. This is, as we know, as sound travels through the air, it loses high frequencies. The farther you get, the more high frequency you lose. That's a well-known mixing technique. You just take the top end off and you can help with that illusion of a sound being far away. But also there's a bunch of different stuff that actually happens to sound. It has to do with the phase and the group delay of different frequencies. And they've gone, Sound Particles has gone to great extents to model all of that. So this is kind of the same idea, but it's like a lot more realistic. And also, this is offered for free. Sound Particles is a really kind of top-end, high-end company in audio post and sound design. Their flagship is called, I think it's just called Sound Particles. And you take like one sound and turn it into a swarm of sounds in surround sounds. So you can take one bee and turn it into like a whole hive of bees, and you can accurately move sounds around in 3D space, according to what, now I guess for the movies you'd be probably Dolby Atmos, but whatever configuration you're using. That's what Sound Particles is all about. So really, they are all about a sense of space. So this plugin's great. Really does what it says on the box, and it's also free. So you get an account with them, and this one they actually call it the Music Edition. So. Basslane.
Basslane.
Okay, from Tone Projects. Tone Projects have not released very much stuff. Back in the day, they the guy Rune, his name is, and he did have another company. They had a couple compressors way back in the day. Like I think he did Compadre and Puncher, and they were different stuff. But nothing until a couple years back came out with a Unisom compressor.
I remember that. We did that one.
Freaked out over that one. And then a year later was Kelvin, and then this year, not too long ago, just a couple months ago, Basslane. And this is it's geared towards mastering. It will help you not only recover the bass, but help keep your bass in phase. It will sort of balance out the different frequencies of the bass range. It'll help get you a solid centered bass without the usual trade-offs in terms of the tone or the width. So it's also very good for vinyl mastering. I've only started to scratch the surface of what this plugin can do, but it's like, wow, okay, so this is definitely a viable option. You can use it also as an EQ, kind of, but it doesn't sound like your typical DAW EQ. There's more magic going on. It's more like, it's really changing the tone of the bass in a really cool way. So this one's definitely on my, probably near, we'll get to our top plugins, but this one's probably up there near the top of the list, I'd say. Okay, Cardiam. This is another good one from Eplex 7. This is a tube modeled EQ similar to, I wouldn't say even similar to Pultec, more even almost like a higher end kind of sound than that. Like a lot of shimmer and glisten on the top. You can add a lot of it because this company's got what they call it zero harshness high end technology. I'm not sure exactly what they do, but it's like they're trying to preserve the transients, but also not give you the jagged stuff that sometimes happens with other EQs. There's really affordable plugin too, by the way. So check out Eplex 7, the Cardiam. I love this EQ. I use it on a bunch of stuff. I wish it had like one more band because I can't do all of the Pultec tricks on it. Just because that high frequency, it only goes down to about 11 kilohertz. If that high frequency went down to say like 3 or 4K, you could do like all the tricks, the bass boost and cut, and then you're punching up at 3K or 4K like on the kick drum. Can't quite do that on this because you'll give up your cut, because you could use the mids to boost up at like 3 or 4, but then you also don't get your cut in addition to the low boost. So it's just choices there, right? But also you got separate vacuum tube warmth and vacuum tube power, which affects the character of the warmth, saturation, lots of stuff to play with. Overall, it's pretty clean, warm. It's not a distortion. It's not a fuzz box. It sounds like a high-end EQ, very analog sounding. So love that. Here you go. This one is one that you said to me, so you could talk about that for a bit, and I will look for these pictures.
It's just a different, I sent it on Signal. It's a different approach to reverb, and I found that some of it is a little too crystalline for me. I'm not really used to very high shimmery, high grainy reverbs, or I normally wouldn't find them desirable, I guess. But you'll notice there's like a distinct lack of your standard, diffusion and density and early reflections versus like the standard reverb controls, which maybe don't, you have to experiment a lot to figure out which parameters actually create the sound you want. Whereas here you can more or less describe it using these different input controls, these buttons. You can say, I want more of this, less of that. And it does a really good job of creating some kinds of reverbs that I would never use, but some that are very, very good, very convincing, and more my style. Like, I like lexicons, but they're also quite bright. So I like stuff that maybe is a little more subdued, or I would tend to use less of a lexicon sound in a mix because it's compelling, energetic, but it's also distracting, and it creates a lot of sonic mush in the top end if you're not careful. Whereas this fits a little nicer, I found, but still is a very beautiful reverb, and it's not terribly expensive, and it's a little more intuitive, or a different UI feel that I find is a little bit more intuitive, and tons of presets. So if you don't know what these controls mean or do, you don't have to worry about it. Grab some presets, play around. Radically different sounds though. And so you can hone in on one where you're like, yeah, I kind of like that category of tonality. So I'm going to take that, see what buttons they've pressed and what, knobs they've turned here to make that distinct sound that I like, that vibe that I'm grooving with. And you can learn from that to create your own presets. So I really enjoyed it. It was kind of a surprise. Now I use things like cinematic rooms more often than not now. So I wouldn't say I use this on every mix, but there were times, especially around keyboards, where I was looking for something very different, and I got it with using crystalline. Perfect.
I haven't tried this one yet, so that's a good word, and that'll make me go and check out the demo for it, because we're both reverb junkies here, so can't have enough flavors, right? I found those pictures. Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. Okay, so if you can bring that one into frame.
I'm doing it the cheap way here. Okay.
So nice. So the description I typed into the AI generator was 3 guys like really excited about something. They're jumping up and down for joy. It's like, it made it. Oh my God, there's 3 people jumping up and down for joy. But can you zoom in on that EB, especially the middle guy's hands?
I wonder if I can. Is there a way to... there we go.
Okay, so there's too many thumbs. First thing you'll notice, there's way too many thumbs. Also,
look at the third. The first guy actually is pretty. Look at that. They're all great.
Yeah, that dude's messed up. Now scroll down to the bottom.
Yeah.
Where you'll see the macabre sort of phantom shadows of like disjointed legs there just floating in the air. So that one's problematic, but this one's not as much of the nightmare maker as the other one is.
Which service was this?
This was, I want to say this was Canva's. Canva has like an AI image generator. Can't remember what it's called.
I thought, because Dolly would give you stuff like this too back when Dolly was, maybe Dolly was maybe someone can help us with that. Maybe that is, maybe it's the same thing, that Dolly was the earlier version. Here we go with photo number 2. Puking in between. No, this is the one that you described with the...
Yeah, woman leaning over computer filling out survey. So grab a look at that keyboard and her fingers. So that's all messed up. But that's not the worst part. The worst part is the lady that's speaking back to her on the screen while she's filling out the survey.
She looks pretty normal. Okay, and we're back after the internet totally went down. So this is going to be a bit of a splice job here, but we're back. We were talking about this amazing AI generated figure on the screen there. Chris?
Yeah, so the caption I typed in was woman leaning over a computer filling out a survey. And she's not filling out a survey. She's talking to the devil, as far as I'm concerned. I don't know what that is on the screen, but scroll down and check out the keyboard, and you'll notice that she's also got like a couple of fingers are fused together there. Like there's something not right happening with her digits, and the keyboard's gone all a little bit nightmare dreamscape. So anyway, I'm glad we had a chance to show those to you guys. Nothing to do with plugins. So let's get back down to business.
Yeah. Let's go back to Cryastalline. You did talk about that, which was awesome. We loved it. I'm going to check it out. I remember that now after our long reconnection efforts here. Okay, so let's move on to the next one then, which is okay, Acustica. We're reviewing all kinds of Acustica stuff last year. I think this one's my favorite out of the bunch. Did you get to try this one, Chris? It's so fat. There's so much subharmonic. It's ridiculous.
Yes, I did. Yep, I did. I haven't had a chance to use it on anything extensively, but it's extremely fat, analog, and warm. Not surprising from the Acustica guys. And everything they're doing is getting better, from the meters down to the compression feel. I find is improving. And of course, their EQs are largely untouchable. But what have you been using it for?
I just been running general stuff through it, especially bass and kick drum. Anything that I want, like to add that fatness to. Anything I want to have like a little more solid. It's totally great for that. And I've done entire mixes through it, and I'll just cycle through the preamps. So I think they give you, how many? They give you 8 different preamps or something. Not all. Some of them are custom, right? So some of them actually have different frequency responses. So once you know which ones have the most bass, right, you can just cycle through, right, and instant fatness. It's instant vibe. This is like an old, I don't know if it's an old EMI or an old Decca desk or something. It was custom built for a label. They got it from some studio in Africa that did a lot of hits on this exact console that they sampled. So yeah, it's great. This is not a free one. This is a paid one, but it's worth every penny, I think. Don't know if this is upgraded with the hyper technology yet. They're planning to go back and do all the plugins, but they don't have a
oh, my bad.
A time frame.
Sorry, I thought it was. Okay.
For the hyper? Maybe it is. I don't know. I think this was the tail end before they started doing the hyper. Not sure. Sounds good anyway. So here's the thing. They updated Cola, for instance, with the hyper, and I'm glad that they didn't take away the original, because there was something special about that original that I still reach for instead of the hyper. Yep. So
a lot of people like that one.
Yeah, something special about the Cola, the compressor in Cola. But the hyper is great, and it doesn't use a tenth the CPU that the normal tech does, but it still has all those complexities, beautiful stuff. Let's go to this guy here, Digitalis. I'm actually going to maybe shrink this back a bit just so we could see a little bit more of the controls here. This is for digital artifacts, digital glitches, dropouts, digital compression artifacts, bit crushing, of course, frequency, sample rate reduction. But it's also got sequencers built in and filters built in, and you can move all of these, you can slide these components around and reorder them and stuff. So you can go from just, it's just a slight kind of sampler vibe. Oh, I want it to sound like an old Akai or an MPC or something. You can do that with it, but you can also just go insane with it. You can, there's pitch shifting on there. There's a bunch of different effects. The stuff I don't even understand what they're doing, but it all sounds digital, and some of it sounds very severe. And it's an affordable plugin. Why can't I remember the name of the company? Come on, where are they? Abberant DSP. Abberant DSP also make a cassette sketch compressor plugin. 2 other plugins. All their plugins, like, they're very aggressive sounding, fucking wicked, and affordable. So Digitalis definitely got my vote for something worth mentioning this year. Oh, let's go back. Here we go. SoundDrops. Yeah. Stefano outdid himself on this sampling. This is a Fender Twin, vintage 70s, sampled the preamps, the EQ, 2 speakers, and also studio rooms in a really nice studio. And if you know the SoundDrops stuff, the way that they capture rooms is phenomenal. I've used them just as reverbs on drums, just to get the room sound and that sort of thing. So SoundDrops really did. This might be my favorite guitar amp. This may be tied with with the DiBiQuadro update for Saturn, which we'll get to. GX80, you were telling me about this one, weren't you, Chris? Yeah,
was this the one? Or I think I was I was looking at the soft tube Juno a recreation, the 84, I think it was. So it wasn't this one. Where'd you get? Who makes this one?
This is Cherry Audio. So this is a recreation of the Yamaha CX80, which everybody knows is the Vangelis' favorite synth. People have been looking for ways to get that sound in digital world, and we can get pretty close. This is closer, though. I got to say, it's amazing. It's brilliant, brilliant quality that they've done here. It's got all the features, including the ring modulation. It's got built-in chorus, flange, delays, effects. Basically, it always was a very odd synthesizer, both in terms of how it sounded and also in terms of the types of controls and just the way they're labeled and stuff. Even normal stuff like just like a filter or stuff you can see here. It's like it doesn't look like normal filter controls on a normal synth. You know what I mean? And then you get all this down here with the tone selectors. What they also modeled on here was the original GX1 from Yamaha, which I don't have a picture of it, but it was this big giant beast, the precursor to this one. Hugely expensive, massive, heavy, probably weighs about a ton. Had these memory cards. It was like Keith Emerson used it. I think Toto had one of them or something. And arguably it was a little less quirky than the CS80. It had like a fatter tone. So they went with the GX1 sound for the oscillators in this. So it sounds wicked. It's amazing, amazing synth for not much money. Oh, here's
There's been some good ones this year. Yeah, I'll just throw in, if you haven't checked out the Model 84 by Soft Tube, do check it out. Especially they recreate the chorus section with the Type 1 and Type 2 choruses, and they're really convincing, and it really has a super analog feel to it. So worth a shot. Soft Tube's still making great stuff after all these years. So the Hittville chambers and the Hittville EQ, not pictured here. This is a universal audio product, but of course we now know you don't have to have the hardware in order to run the UAD plugins if you get a subscription to UAD Spark. And I think over the holidays they've been offering it for 99 cents a month for 3 months or something like that. So if you don't have it, you should definitely grab it. And the Hittville Chambers is a reproduction of, I think, a Motown reverb chamber. And so like most chamber plugins, you can pick the roll-offs, you can pick the mics, you can pick the distance, you can pick the speaker that's on the floor shooting up towards the mics and bouncing off the walls. But it's just a great new fun. I mean, their Capital Chambers is very hard to beat. But if you don't have the UAD hardware, that's not yet available to you. So this is an excellent, very vintage sounding. If you're looking for a 50s, 60s, 70s kind of sound, a real vintage classic flavor from a reverb that's not too digital, the antithesis of, let's say, the Lexicon style 480 and 960 reverbs, this is completely different. Really fun sounding. I had to play with it a little bit to get it to sit nice in the mix. It tends towards the toppy side, as you might remember from that Motown era. They were used largely on vocals and instruments. And so the bottom end, you'll be surprised how much of it in some of those speaker types isn't there. Like that model that they're showing on the floor, I think, is very, 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 very narrow in the top band. But forget about that. Once you put it into a mix, you'll hear what I'm talking about. It's got a really nice vintage vibe. And the EQ as well, the Hittville EQ, very, very cool and distinct sounding equalizer.
Wish I had a picture of that. I didn't think to grab a picture of that one.
Yeah, all good. It's they're the only two, I think, audio plugins that UAD has released this year. They're focused more on their pedals, on their hardware, and on their, the new Volt series, the prosumer interfaces they've created, and on some of their soft synths and the Luna DAW. So they haven't been doing a lot of plugins lately, but these two both came out this year, standout plugins. Give them a try, at least. If you get the trial for 99 cents a month for 3 months, you can't go wrong. And check these out or use them on a couple of mixes and see. If you don't like it, let the subscription expire. You have no obligation. So this was a good one. I'm always checking for a new and cool groovy reverb, and this one is kind of a one-shot deal, like a one-trick pony, but it does it quite well.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's just to get the sound of that space captured in detail. It's how many records we heard that has that sound on it, and love it. So I think I'm gonna eventually bite the bullet and go for the Spark subscription at some point and just do it. I was always kind of opposed to subscriptions and also to iLok dongles too. But I've been coming around a bit. I've got a whole bunch of iLok machine authorization. I've even got some cloud now. So
they do this on the cloud.
They do
this.
They do.
You don't need to authorize it to an iLok device. You can do it to the iCloud. That's good.
But is it still a subscription?
It is still a subscription.
Yeah.
So the iLok doesn't cost you anything, but the UAD Spark is a subscription, yeah. But worth it for things like the API console, Pure Plate Reverb, the True 1176 and LA2 emulations. Their Neve 1073 is among the best as well. You can't try it and you'll see.
Right. Yeah, I'm gonna have to. So that's definitely on the list. I waited long enough. When did it come out? The summer, right? When they announced it. I guess the Windows versions that I use Windows, that hasn't been actually that long that these have been available. But it's time. I've been thinking about it. That'll be a New Year's resolution for 2022. Right. Yeah. Reverb chambers, and there's also the EQ that goes with it. Auburn Sounds released Air. This is a crazy plugin. I don't believe that I've got another plugin that does quite what this does, and so I picked it up instantly. It splits the plugin into bands. I don't know if it might be 64 bands. So technically, it's like a multi-band compressor expander, would probably be the best way to put it. But if you see down here, you've got the two sections here. This is for your sidechain EQ, and then this is for your output EQ. Now, the sidechain EQ is where I believe the full true power of this lies. I was able to change sounds from the inside out. I had this live recording that was like done on a camcorder, like zero bass. It was all piano. You couldn't even hear the drums. I mucked around with the frequencies and gave it a nice compression expansion. It's like, I killed all the mids, brought the piano out. You could hear the bass. It's like no other plugin could do what this one did. It really literally changed the sound from the inside out. Did pretty well in more subtle settings, although you may want to just go for some basic saturation on that. This does have even an odd harmonics and stuff. It's got the expander, the compressor, and a vintage selection. You can choose a different number of bands too, so you can simplify the crossover network or not. Really clean. Doesn't sound phasey. Yeah, I love this plugin. So give that a try. The Auburn Sound Lens, it's called. Lens.
Yeah, I will. That looks cool.
Very cool. Moving on, Relab. It's a plugin we know. It's been around forever, but they did update it, right, to the new version, which is a dual engine version. Same exact algorithms, so the reverbs themselves don't sound any different. However, if you get into the settings and the different controls, you can enable or disable the digital parts, because this plugin, they modeled like the converters and some of the digital chips and stuff. You can turn that on or off. You get a little more clarity if you turn it off, a little more character if you leave it on. Love this plugin. I had the basic version forever, and I just bit the bullet. And so now I did always want to update, and then once they gave this dual engine, I'm like, yeah, I'm there. I'll do it. But you like the Relab stuff, right? Yeah.
I do like Relab stuff. Alternates, I mean, obviously UAD has the 480 and the 224, the 224 being available in the Spark, and also Reverb Foundry, now Liquid Sonics, create an HD cart, which I think models a bunch of 480 and 960 stuff as well. It's an excellent competitor too. Not to mention, even, if you're a Valhalla Reverb or whatever that company name is, they've got some of their vintage and room plugins. They model some of the 480 stuff as well. I don't have the full pack of the Relab. I think I trialed it at one point. So I'm not sure how this measures up. I'm interested in the fact that they're modeling the chips and the converters. That might be an interesting thing to hear. But there's just some kinds of music where you gotta have that Lexicon 480 sound, right? That nice, bright, jump in your face, immersive reverb. It's a certain sound. I find newer reverbs are either a little bit darker or they're a little more spatial and in your face. And so in many ways they've been improved, but this sits so well in a mix. It's just so easy to blend in with a song for especially for rock and pop. There's no other way to get that sound that you grew up listening to in the 80s.
So much, yeah. It is the sound of the 80s, right? Like, love it. Love it. So that's worth checking out. There is a Elements version or something that's not expensive, and then this is the flagship product for Relab. So definitely worth checking out. Oh, okay, here's one that Chris can go to town on, because this is UAD Luna API Console.
Yeah, I mean, this is a unique product in the sense that it's not just a plugin, although it's available in plugin form. So I can go into Logic, for example, and instantiate a couple of channels worth or a bunch of channels worth of API preamp, compressor, gate module, EQ, obviously, and I think there's a master bus compressor on there too. I can't recall. But more importantly, if it doesn't have the 2500 there on the right-hand side, I think that's exactly what that is the bus comp. When you're in Luna, this is like natively when you open up a channel, you just say, do you want this to be an API channel or just a regular plain old channel? And so all of these are integrated with the channel controls, and there's not really much of a CPU hit to run 60, 100 channels with that API sound on it. And then at the very end, they have the API summing. Mm-hmm. So if you like the API sound, over a bunch of different modules and channels and the bus compressor and the summing module into Luna, that analog really starts to build up and it creates a convincing analog console vibe. You can't get, aside from Acustica's Pink, which does a great job of emulating especially the EQ section of an API board, the 550A, 550B, and I think they do the graphic as well.
Right.
Which is the 560, probably the 560.
Yeah, they've got, it's 5 something. I love the graphics. Got great subharmonic, low frequencies on there. That are great. Absolutely. So this, very, very low CPU, at least in my experience. And when I'm doing, when I do podcast tracks, it's a pretty hard argument to go against having everything in one single strip. This, in a way, models, what was the one that Waves did? And it was an Andy Sheps thing. Omni-channel.
Omni-channel, that's it. Very similar in design and layout, right? You got all the modules laid out in front of you. You can opt in on the EQ, the comp. They make such great low-pass filters even. The best part of it, though, is the crispy gain that you get by overdriving the preamp or mic section, like the liner mic section of an API preamp. So you can get that authentic grit just by diming the line or mic control, as the case may be. And so I use this on a lot of stuff, any voiceover stuff. This is my first go-to be honest with you, especially when using dynamic mics. Nothing sweetens up an SM7B or the newer MX7, I can't remember the model. I'm probably screwing that up. MV7.
That sounds right, yeah.
Or an RE20, or for that matter, a Beta 58, quite like an API channel strip. So I use this one quite a bit. This is a big part of my template chain. And if you don't have it, again, it's another great reason to try out the UAD Spark.
Love it. Yeah. That's great that it you can get those tones, with the subscription, right? So I look forward to it. I'm a little bit scared to put it up against some of my other API favorites, right? I'm like, oh, okay, what was I doing all these years? But I don't know if I'll really get that or not. I'll just have to try it and see it, right?
You'll like it. You like it.
Maybe become a UAD fanboy after all these years. Hey, you don't need that. I know that's good.
I don't use it a lot. I seek out as much as I can plugins that I can run without being attached to any hardware. Much though I love my UAD, I also don't love Neve equalizers all that much where it needs to be on everything I do. Yeah. If it's not my built-in DAW compressor, Logic has a great compressor built into it, a couple of good EQs, but also my Acustica stuff. Those things just work. I've been using Kirchhoff EQ or Kirchhoff. I can't remember how you're supposed to pronounce it, but
that's wicked.
Kirchhoff, been using that a lot lately as well, and Kirchhoff. Yeah. And so I often find that I don't need to dig into the UAD, but when you want a Lexicon 224, there's kind of only one place to get it right now. Yeah. And a good LA2A, hard to find. So I would say UAD shines there, but if I can help it, I don't want things hanging off the side of my computer. I'm often mixing in a hockey rink or on a bus or something, you know.
Well, just to be tied to additional hardware, right? There's a good case to be made for just going strictly native and not having to worry about that stuff. But then on the other hand, I mean, and UAD is not the only, by the way, you know, not the only system where there's the Antelope stuff. I think has all these great plugins, but you have to have their converters. I'm not sure about Apogee. There's a bunch of Apogee plugins that I seem to remember used to be tied to hardware. Maybe they're not now. I mean, it doesn't really make a difference to the sound. It's going to be the same math, whether it was native or with the DSP. There used to be a case where the DSP just had to make so much more calculations. You didn't want your computer doing that, right? I don't know how much that difference is anymore with the faster chips that we have in computer land, but yeah, there's something that see. I've been native all these years, right? And I just get scared to break with that. It's like, what happened to me, man? Oh, you used to be cool.
All right, let's bang through the last couple here.
Yeah, let's just get moving on in there. So we now have. Let me go to the next one here. Oh, Alesis micro limiter. This thing just came out. Purified. What's his name? Something Pure is his last name. He loves the Alesis stuff, as do we. It's a micro limiter that he's done up to they've modeled it to the best of their ability, and it really is convincing. In fact, it just sounds great. It's good for smashing. That's what it's good for. It's smashing in a way that it sounds like it might be a brick wall limiter, but it is not. This is a model of an analog limiter, and with the attendant attack release times, the additional distortion. You got a mix knob on there. You got auto gain, oversampling, dual mono mode, which is a whole bunch of stuff that the original Alesis did not have. So it's kind of like super Alesis, right? While we're on the topic of Alesis, let's just go. I didn't want to do that. I really didn't. But we haven't been putting the snippets in either, right? Which remember all those glorious snippets. I know we're trying to move along here, right? But you know, but what are you going to do, right?
He failed, not I. There we go.
There we go. And
we worked hard on making those.
These are some new ones, right? That's what I want to show you guys, the new ones, right? I wanted to, yeah. Let's play that one.
Ma'am, we didn't find any boy.
I didn't tell you. So, have we done an episode since Halloween? I don't think so, because I went to Horror Fest.
We were supposed to do it.
That's right. I went to a horror fest in Niagara Falls like I do every year, and I met Amy Steele, who was Ginny from Friday the 13th Part 2, and I was just starstruck. So I've got somewhere, there's like a picture. I should send you that picture as well. Maybe we get it up on screen for the horror episode. But yes. Anyway, that was from Friday the 13th Part 1 at the very end. Man, we didn't find any boy. It's like, sequel time. Anyway, sorry, Eric.
In the lake. He's still in the lake.
He must still be there.
That shit. Because it's pretty young when that came out, and that was the scariest. Yes. Like,
pretty
there's
terrifying.
The one with a boat. There's the other one where it comes through the window.
Yep, you got it.
Oh yeah. Well, we'll get to some of the scary, because some of this stuff's being remade now. So maybe I won't remember to put the box, but it'll be at the beginning. I'll remember to do that.
It's in the box.
Yeah.
All right, I'm sending you the picture of me and Amy. So please go ahead.
Awesome. Yeah, well, we'll just go back to the to our plugin panel and realize that we're not quite so bad. Let's pull this guy up. This is Siren P565 filter set from Pulsar Modular, not to be confused with Pulsar Audio. Pulsar Audio, of course, making the 1178 and the Very Mu, and they made a massive passive, which is on the list. This is another company called Pulsar Modular. High-end plugins. This is their second most recent release. They did just release a compressor, but this is the one that really kind of made me go like, whoa. I actually did a full walkthrough of this one on the Obsessive Audio channel, and it's just screaming filters. They're modeled after the Moog filters, but also Altec filters and the Uri Little Dipper notch filter set. And this thing can do it can just crazy things because you can put the filter part out of phase, you can delay it, you can modulate it. There's an envelope follower, so you can get anything from like an auto wah. There's actually a little pitch knob too that if you automate that in the DAW, you get like a chorusing effect as well. It's not really built into the functionality, but it's a little cheat on it that you can do. Really great stuff. I use this. I dialed in EQs for kick drums on that because it's got great saturation too. So I was able to like just turn a kick drum inside out and transform it with this thing. Auto wah, like I used it actually for a guitar wah pedal too. I hooked it up to a MIDI expression pedal. This thing is just, it's fantastic. The drive is really good. It works actually really good in front of a virtual guitar amp as well. So I'm definitely sold on this one. Yeah, the PSP, the P565 Siren from Pulsar Modular. Next up, Eventide Physion. Do you remember when Physion's actually an earlier plugin, but if you remember last year when Split EQ came out and you could EQ either the transients or the tonal aspects, well, that was their first EQ, but it was actually based on this plugin, Physion, which had come out earlier. Now this is the Physion MK2, and it just like Split EQ, it splits the transients from the tonal aspects, but instead of just EQ, you can have all kinds of different effects on there. So you can put delay on it, you can gate the effects, you can, it does have a basic EQ, it's got reverb, it's got a whole bunch, it's got chorus, it's got a whole bunch of different effects that you can do only to the transients or only to the tonal aspects, or you can totally change the focus or the mix so you're only getting transients or only getting the tonal effects. So it's really good, not only as a problem solver, but also as a creative tool. It looked like when you look at the plugin on their website, or when you just take a first quick look at the GUI, it looks like, oh man, this is going to be really complicated, but it's actually not. There isn't I didn't find there's a ton going on with this plugin, aside from that amazing algorithm that splits the two aspects of the sound, and then they got pretty high quality effects that are built in. What people have been requesting is that I just want to use this plugin to split it and then send it to two different tracks, and then I could use whatever plugins I want to on the tonal or on the transient. And you can do it, but you need two instances of the plugin, and you're sort of cheating it, right? You're going to put a reverb on with no mix and balance it all the way, and then put a second plugin with no mix, and you can do it, but it's not a built-in functionality. So that's something that people would like to see out of this, but if you see this guy on sale, I'd say check it out, because you can do things, especially when it comes to fixing sounds. Consider it like a transient enhancer on a transient designer on steroids, because you're not just affecting levels or EQ. You can get a whole lot more out of it. So that's the Physion MK2. Yeah.
No, I was just going to say, it seems like a lot of plugins this year were almost like multiple one knob plugins in a big plugin. What I mean by that is we moved away from modeling strict hardware. So this is obviously a Pultec, this is obviously an LA2A, and we've gotten more into fully functional or AI assisted plugins that let you do a bunch of things to the sound. So we're no longer trying to model old hardware, we're trying to create new sounds and new expressions with totally different shaping tools. That seems to be more the mode in the past year or two with plugins, and I respect that. I always feel like, but if it doesn't have the kind of sonic excellence of, let's say, an Acustica, is this worth putting on my tracks? But I find most of them sound pretty damn good. So that was just an observation as I was watching you talk about it.
It's like they're in some aspects you're trading the yeah, at least that if it doesn't sound as good, for instance, as this plugin or an Acustica or that, but in one way, it's not. Some of these plugins are not as complex, or it's very pure, almost linear processes going on. The distortions are pretty simple. The reverb algorithms on this one, for instance, pretty simple. But it's that core of the engine, that the intelligence essentially that's built in. That's where the real juice is, right? That you're not going to get that out of just a standard modeling plugin. No matter how good they model it, it's going to be based on that piece of hardware if they sample it, whatever.
Right.
And of course, the companies, what I love about companies is they can take it beyond. They can give the compressor attack and release speeds that it never had before. They can make the EQ go in between the notches. They can do stuff like that, right? Which you couldn't do before. So yeah, it's just a different type of tool, right? To me, these kinds of tools are more kind of precision, especially when you're talking about transients and stuff. Although in the case of Physion, you may want to just get into some crazy sound design and distortion and that sort of thing. But yeah, I tend to like the cleaner kind of effects, precision, and broad strokes with the stuff that sounds really analog and messed up. But anyway, that's not even really a rule or anything. That's just something I'm just talking out of my ass right now. Anyway,
Sure.
So next up, Uberverb. Back to, and this is what when we went on that little segue with all the two new clips and stuff. This is what I wanted to pull up, was unable to do so technologically, but here it is now. Uberverb from Sergio Frias. It's got this is an algorithmic plugin, so it's not samples. It's not like impulses of the microverb from Alesis. It's the actual algorithms, or at least the best that they could reconstruct them. This thing sounds like a microverb. So between this and the micro limiter, so we were joking about that, right? About the Alesis stuff and all the Alesis plugins, and it was like, what if you had a band called Alesis? you made an album called Quadriverb.
It turns out someone did.
Yeah, well, someone made a song called Quadriverb. So
Yeah.
Aphex Twin, right? All of his albums in the 90s had some kind of, everybody had some kind of Alesis. And I'm not just talking about the reverbs. ADATs, think about all the number of things that were recorded onto ADATs back in the 90s. That's the sound of 90s. Don't have enough money for analog tape rock, right?
Exactly.
The drum kits with the drum modules, another thing, like the Alesis D4 and D5. You could use those to trigger. You could run your drum tracks into that off of the multitrack and like trigger the drums in your mix with an Alesis D4. That was revolutionary from the time. That's also something you're going to hear at a lot of 90s records. I don't even know revolution. This is all stuff that people were maybe doing earlier on in the 80s, but with really expensive toys. And
yes,
there was a certain time period this now started to become available to your average, like,
that was the thing about that
Grammy associated, project.
If you wanted to record anything and you didn't want to do it on a cassette deck, you had a Tascam 4 8-track or a Fostex, and then you had either a mini verb or a micro verb or a quadriverb if you were loaded and your parents, had a trust fund that you had access to. And a handful of the Alesis had a compressor too. I can't remember the model number, but you would remember it certainly.
Oh, 3630.
The 3630, that's it. Thank you.
Yeah.
And the various pedal manufacturers, that Roland was not a pedal manufacturer primarily, but they started coming out with affordable delays and reverbs that made it possible to have something in your home studio that was decent quality, and thus the idea of the pro demo was kind of born. And this is how a guy like Dave Grohl releases his first Foo Fighter record without going into a professional studio. If I remember, I think that was done on a home 8-track. And those things became possible thanks to companies like Alesis. Long since, a running joke, like who wants Alesis gear now? But it enabled us to turn a corner in that home recording revolution, which dominated through the 2000s, as you know. So, a cute little piece of history there.
Really great. I mean, I remember you used to have a quadriverb and bass. Well, you never got rid of it. I bought a quadriverb some years ago just because I want that sound, and I want the real sound. I want to track it on the way in. These plugins weren't available. And besides, this is the microverb, so it's still, I don't know if anyone made a plugin for the quadriverb yet. That's another classic that hopefully we get to see. Here's one that I think we can all agree is we both have this one. What do you think? What do you give you your thoughts on this one?
Hard to beat either the UAD or second in line is Acoustic Audio Magenta, but this one is quite good and has the familiar interface. What I like about it is it looks like a massive passive. To my mind, one of the best equalizers ever made. You could use it on tracks, you could use it on mixes. There's a mastering edition of this equalizer, both in hardware and software. Sounds phenomenal. And this one even models the like the input drive a little bit, which may or may not be present on the hardware. I don't know if there's a variable input gain on the hardware. I can't remember, but this one does allow you to jack the drive a little bit and otherwise behaves like functionally and sonically, largely like a massive passive. Very, very, it's an equalizer that can get into corners and get you results that a lot of other equalizers can't. So everyone should have one of these.
Yeah, agreed. I've been chasing that sound for a long time. As you know, not being a UAD, I didn't have access to that one. That was one of the first really good massive passives in the box. The Acustica came out with Magenta, used that all the time, and then this guy, it's like, wow, this one's great. What I love about this, you can dial in as much drive as you want. The drive is separated, right? So you take it out and make it completely clean. It's just like normal digital equalizer, but with the manly curves. Or you can fuzz it out quite a bit on this thing. It's got the low and high pass filters. I don't know if it's got the oversampling built in. There might be different qualities that you can set, but there are also transformers that you can switch in and out on this one as well.
Yes.
So just makes it very, very versatile. I think Pulsar makes some of the best analog modeling out there. Between this, they've got an 1178, which is based on the 1176.
I have that too.
Just this Black Friday, I finally bought their Verimue. Because I realized when I'm mastering with that, it's like, wow, this does the thing, but it's not darkening the track in the way that the other,
big warm squeeze.
Yeah, but it wasn't making it dark like the way some of the other plugins of the Verimue were. So I was like, yeah, for sure, I'm all in. And it was making it loud too. I don't know if I just found a really good setting on it or what it was, but it's like, well, this is easy. This isn't a lot of work. Okay, this is on my mastering chain now. As an option,
good.
Okay, that's working, and it's working a lot of the time. So, yeah,
awesome.
Kudos to Pulsar. Keep up the good work. They also have an Echo rec that they made. There's a free, well, it used to be free. There's another one called Smasher, which is kind of like a messed up. I don't know if it's FET or VCA, but it's like a really aggressive compressor that's really affordable. Again, there's another high end company. Let's do the next up. Oh, here we go.
We did a review on this.
We did.
Yeah. The Quantum 2772, Quantum Evolution. This is the model of the Quantec, the room reverb from what, the 80s? Did that come out?
Yeah.
When was 80s. That hardware unit? Was it 80s?
Yeah.
And it does one thing and does it really well. And it's one of those units where if you want that sound, you have to go for that unit. You know, I wouldn't say it's the best sounding reverb ever, but if you want that sound of the Taj Mahal room that it was famous for, this is where you get it. So this company did a great job of making a compelling replica. I have it, you have it, and every now and again, you go when you just can't get a reverb sound that's grabbing you, try this one on, and you may find it does the trick. Yeah, no totally. Plates, no real plates or chambers or any of that fancy stuff. No, really room/hall.
Yeah, and it doesn't seem to rely on modulation the way the Lexicon does. So it doesn't have the coarse, that coarse tails, which can be so beautiful if they're long and big and rich and coursing out. But this one doesn't. I guess they base it on modal, I want to say feedback, but resonances. It's not their concept of generating all the reflections. It's not based on like, okay, it's this many feet to this wall and it bounces off this wall. Let's calculate all those They're thinking more in terms of air volume and resonant frequencies and like thousands of resonant frequencies to build this. It's a different kind of algorithm. Very smooth. I find very good at classical music and music where you don't want it to give it that kind of lexicon edge or whatever. Go for this one. It's a lot more natural.
Yep.
And it doesn't exhibit the quirks in like the little resonances that can happen in IRs sometimes, the little phasiness that you get with impulse. But this doesn't have that. But it's smooth like those. So hats off. This was a great plugin. Still available, I'm sure. It's a smaller developer. This might even be the first product, but knocked it out of the park. Love it. Might want to do with a more square. I like the rack. The rack mount looks cool, but it's, as you can see, it's kind of hard to fit on the screen sometimes. So let's see what's going on. So I might like a version where you can squeeze it down and get some rows and columns happening kind of thing. But that's a pretty petty complaint. Really, everything else about this plugin is spectacular. Next up, DiBiQuadro. Again, I say along with Stefano's Fullerton amp, this is tied, I think, for the fact that they put the cabinets. This is a version 2. Version 1 came out a few years ago. Version 2, they now have the cabinets built in. The cabinets are based on their Power Cabs series, which was a Nebula library. I don't know how they've included in here if they're licensing the technology from Acustica, or if they've come up with their own alternate way of capturing things that that doesn't infringe on patents or whatever. I don't know, but it's a similar technology. It's not static like a typical speaker impulse response. You can really hear the difference. You can hear air move, as it were. Love this. Again, this, if you remember, we did do a review on this one, I think, in particular. Maybe we did their one of their other ones. I know on Obsessive Audio I've probably done all 3. But you can go into the circuits on this. You can go into the individual circuit for like the tone stack or for the different channels. You can change individual capacitor values, tube voltages, resistor values. They show you the circuit. You can change them in real time, just like a Spice model, and you can hear the changes. I've used that technique to turn guitar amps into bass amps. I've used it to turn guitar amps to make them a lot flatter, so I could just actually use it as an EQ, because it does sound really good. It's got circuit modeling. It models all the interaction between, like the nonlinear interactions between all the components, like a Spice model would. And also you can do extreme oversampling. So if you're worried about aliasing, you can go up to 8,192 times oversampling on this. That's not a real-time process.
No.
They give you an offline rendering, a little offline rendering application that you can use. And for something like that, if you're doing a whole song, it depends on your hardware, but I mean that could take all night to do one track at that level of oversampling, right? And I find you don't really need that. If you're up to like 64, 128, you're probably 256, you're probably good. You're probably not going to hear an audible difference.
Right.
Once you go beyond there, but who knows? I have done short samples at 8192, and it is perfect. There's no aliasing. There's no, everybody does those little waterfall charts and stuff, and you can always see a little bit, and it's like you don't see it. It's analog clean in terms of all the harmonics. Wow. Nothing above Nyquist reflects at all once you've got that much oversampling going on. But so DiBiQuadro Saturn, they've got 3 amplifiers out. Library of cabinets too for Nebula as well, although they are starting to build that in. And I think they've got another Nebula plugin that just does harmonics, which is cool, called Domino or Dominion or something like that. Really cool. Love this company. Great stuff. Oh, okay. True Balance and True Level from Sonimus. I got this plugin because I have already a million monitoring metering plugins. I've got every one. And then the DAWs come with their own extensive ones too. But what this has, the other ones that I didn't have already, was you look over here on the left, this is a spectral balancing plugin. So you load up different references. You can load up your own references, or you can hit their database. It works very similar to the tonal balance feature of Isotope's Ozone. And they give you this curve, so you've got your mix going or your master going, and you can adjust the loudness and stuff, to get it in the zone. And this plugin will tell you, nope, bass should come down by 3 dBs. Nope, high end needs to come up by 2 dBs. Mids are great, whatever. And then you pick your own references, or you pick from their database. And it's about as accurate as anything else. I wanted something where I could just quickly look just to make sure I'm in the ballpark. We get that ear drift over time. You start working really loud or bright, and then all of a sudden you're making everything too loud, or you pump up the subwoofers and they're starting to make mixes with no bass. And it's like you want to be able to see when you're getting off track, right? You just get tired, right? Or if you're just getting tracks in from somebody for the first time, and you go, no, that doesn't sound right. Why not? This will show you what the deficiencies in this, or which parts of the spectrum are too loud, right away. It's not. I don't think it's AI is smart enough to make all the decisions for you. I don't think Ozone is either, personally. Right? I know people will use it for that stuff like Lander and the different services. They do a pretty good job, but I think humans still have the edge at least for 3 more months. And then when AI does all of our mixing and mastering, we'll never have to hear about it on Gear Space ever again. Since people will just stop talking about it. It's just like, upload it here, put the CLA preset on, there you go, right? Maybe they give you 3 for 1. They'll give you CLA Bob Clearmountain and Andy Wallace. And you just pick between the three mixes. You say, no, I want Andy Wallace in the verse and CLA for the chorus. Right? And then maybe you do stuff like that, right? And then people will start talking about that, right? They won't start talking about whether it's better to put an EQ first before the compressor. Why does this plug? I wanted to do some videos, and I'm just going off on. I'm going to put the next one. This is the next one, the last one. We've already talked about this, but this is the UAD Spark. That was probably our biggest video, by the way, Chris.
Yeah, it was one of them. I think because a lot of UAD fans, I mean, we would tend to talk about Acustica, a bigger percentage of the time, and then all of a sudden we went into a different product line that, we've never met those customers before. So I think we had a few people come and view from the Universal Audio world, but it was great to see those things in native format finally. And I think for a way, people are always bashing the platform, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Tools are tools, and you should respect the fact that all different tools do all different things differently. Some of them are cost effective. Some of them are CPU effective. Some of them sound gorgeous. Some of them are, such great replications of the original hardware that it's really hard in a blind test to tell which is hardware, which is software, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Know your tools. What can you put on 100 different tracks and not worry about tapping out your CPU? What's convincing when it needs to be convincing? If you have 128 tracks, do you need each one to feel like it has complete three-dimensional analog depth? By the time you add all those tracks up, you're not going to notice. You won't be able to tell that it wasn't a stock EQ plugin from your Pro Tools setup. So you have to be discerning about when to deploy different kinds of tools. When you want realism, it had better be in an environment where you've captured the full frequency spectrum of, let's say, an acoustic guitar, because if you've chopped off the bottom, a bunch of the top, and carved out a bunch of the middle to make room for a bunch of horns and synths and pianos and drums, percussion, then it's really difficult to make a case for putting on a plugin that uses so much CPU that you can only have one instance before you have to print a track. So I think that having this as an option in your toolkit, even if you don't like UAD, makes sense. Try it out. This is component-based modeling rather than sampling. And it was groundbreaking at the time. There were no plugins that sounded better. You couldn't touch it. You just couldn't touch it. And we reviewed some plugins, people trying to duplicate, let's say, the API console sound, or even Wave's 1176 rendition, the CLA 76. They sound good. They just don't sound like the real hardware. UAD was the first company that really nailed that, and they really set the bar. And they have some very clever creative plugins as well. If you've never been in this, the megaverse of UAD, get yourself in there, go look around and try and see which plugins really, are eye openers. The LA2A is the one to start with as far as I'm concerned. So is their Ampex tape deck. Try that out. I think it's available now for Spark. Maybe I better check my facts before I tell you it's available. It may only, that's right. It's only the Studer that's available. But assume that the Ampex is coming.
They're going to add it, right? They'll keep adding stuff
at some point
to give more value for the proposition. Yeah, I'm going to try it for sure. I mean, I've heard
definitely
for so
try it
many
out
years
and see
about how great they are that I just owe it to myself, and you do too.
You do too. That's right.
If they let you do it for a month or give you a trial or something, especially, right? There's nothing, you don't have to get hardware anymore. And that's actually, I think for those of us that have trained ourselves to be native, it's like, there's almost like a hangover effect where it's like, oh yeah, right. I don't have to I can just put this on my computer like right now in 5 minutes. And try it, right? So yeah,
I just got into the Native Instruments world a couple of weeks ago. I had no idea of their audio plugins, and I had no idea of their soft synths. So I'm looking at this big thing, going, which thing do I buy? Like, here's Massive, it was on sale, et cetera, but I don't know what to buy. But they have a $10 a month subscription where you get a whole bunch of it. You get Massive X, you get a whole bunch of their smaller little things. You get a contact player, and Battery is another one that I'd heard a million times.
Machine is great,
Yes. Yeah. So I threw it on, and for $10 a month, now I can play with it for 3 months and say, okay, I don't need this, but I've been using this a lot. So if you hate subscriptions, cancel your subscriptions and just buy the pieces that you need. To me, that makes so much more sense.
You get yourself a keyboard set up or whatever, right? Get the subscription, work on some music, make sure you get all the tracks down, commit them to audio, you're done, right? That's you pay $10 for your session for a month of studio time.
That's right.
You pick through all of the different instruments, and the stuff is sampled really well. As far as sampled music goes for a stock library, where you're not buying all the specialty stuff, which can get really expensive. Native Instruments, I've done scores with just the Vienna Orchestra that comes in there and a couple of their drums. They got that studio drummer, which is actually really good.
Very good.
And even some of their audio plugins, like SoftTube made a couple of like reverbs and compressors for them. The other thing I noticed is they're teaming up with Plugin Alliance.
Isotope.
So you're starting to see Native Instruments stuffs on Plugin Alliance's site. I wonder if that's further like this trend of consolidation, or if companies kind of coming together with their libraries. We saw also just this week that the Sonox plugins are now going to be under the I don't know that they bought them, but they became a part of the Focusrite group. That's right. So just more things like that where plugin manufacturers, I don't know if it's a saturation of the market or if it's just people saying, yeah, we got this company. It's just like, you know, let's see if you can take it to the next level or whatever. I don't know. But
and there's so much choice right now. You've got, you know, I myself and you too, Eric, have got folders upon folders of plugins that we're probably never going to use. Yep. And many of them, I mean, almost all of them, we paid for. We waited for the sales and we bought them just like you. And this, to me, you can try a subscription for a couple of months and say, I use this every day. I use this never. So now you know what you want to commit to. If you don't want to keep paying the subscription, I think it's a good option. You know, I wouldn't want to run my whole life on a subscription, but it's a really great way to get into their little universe, try some things out, see what works for you. Hey, so is that it? Did we go through the whole list?
Yeah, I think you know what we should do right now is just like, if you've got any idea which you think you'd like your top one to be, or your top 2 or 3, or we were going to prepare lists. We didn't really, right? So
I definitely liked Clarity VX because for me, I do so much voiceover and I need something that cleans up the background. Are you
using the normal, or did you spring for the Pro?
I just used the normal.
Yeah, me too. So good. Okay.
So that would probably be one, and then the other one. Do like the Massive Passive, of course.
It is nice.
I'll stick with Clarity. If I got to pick one, I'll stick with Clarity. I mean, obviously API. The only reason I don't say it's the API. It's not new. It's actually came out a couple of years ago. It's new to Spark. So if I had to pick the one that's most useful to me, it's going to be the API.
And you've been using it a lot more this year as well, right? So
Yep. And Clarity VX is the other one.
And then you also have the Massive, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's great. We'll do. For me, I'm going to do. You know, I was gonna pick Tan because it was the first free Acustica plugin that used the hyper, and it fucking sounds awesome. It's particularly on snare, by the way. Just get this plugin just for snare.
It's free.
Watch what it can do. Like, oh my God, it's got the exact timing and the exact tone. Like, it sits exactly where you want for a heavy snare mix.
And with hardware compressors, we take it for granted. Hardware compressors are really hard to time to a snare. Sometimes it's just there's 2 choices and it's right in between the 2. Yeah, it's hard to make it work. So yeah, it says something.
I may still go with that, but while we're on the topic, because I don't even know if I went full screen with this one. This is their latest.
Oh yeah.
Which is Ash clipping. It's also one of my top picks because in addition to the compressors changing with the Acustica's hyper technology, they've also introduced their method of clipping, which is derived still from sampling. They're still sampling actually clipping of converters to come up with this product, but it just doesn't use as much CPU. It sounds fantastic. You can oversample it extremely. So there's that. I know I'm going to just like run through 3 Acustica things here if I can find where's the new one, Arctic. Maybe Arctic wasn't out. Oh, it was. Yeah, we showed it already. Okay, Arctic is free, so get that one too. Go to Acustica, start an account with them, get Arctic, get Tan for free. Start trying some of the demos like Ash, some of the ones we mentioned, Pink, Cola. They're all great. Desert on this episode. So I'm going to pick the Tan from Acustica. I think I'm going to pick... maybe I'll leave it at that because you already covered the Massive was going to be there. I also like this this E-Plex. That's a great value, by the way. This might get a award for best value. It's not very expensive and it sounds freaking great, high end. And to pick one more, I want to give it. Oh, I want to give it to Stefano, really, for the Fullerton.
Yeah.
That's a great amp. DiBiQuadro is close, but because that DiBiQuadro is an update, but Fullerton's a new product. So that's okay. Those are my picks.
Awesome.
Yeah.
It's been a great year for plugs.
Oh yeah, absolutely, man. Let's
Good.
Let's get back to the mode here. And we did we also we're gonna do some more snippets on that. Okay, this is the plug-in one. We're also gonna be doing a horror movie one, so get ready, kids. That's gonna be fucking sick and crazy. I've only had the one beer, but that's gonna change when we get into horror movie mode. I've got an extra special Christmas beer for that.
Oh,
one.
nice.
Yeah.
All right, guys, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, however you celebrate, spend some time with your friends and your family and enjoy the holiday season, take some time off work and check out some of these new plugins. I hope this was useful. I know there were no real sound demos or anything, but just a chance to run down the best of the best for 2022 and looking forward to a great 2023. Thanks for watching us here on the Mixer System.
Cheers, guys. Thanks for watching, and we are out.